Today we are talking about quality online course design and specifically accessibility, usability, and student support. We will kind of tie these things in, but for those of you who have been kind of following along with this series, this particular one aligns with Quality Matters standards 7 and 8. And again, I'll kind of share at the end how that all fits together for you. My name is Tracy Miller, and interesting, the picture did not come out this time. I don't look like a gray box. I actually look much more like the icon that's down on the bottom, and of course the video. But I am the online teaching coordinator in the Faculty Development Instructional Design Center at Northern Illinois University. I'd like to welcome everyone to this session this afternoon. Our folks from NIU, you've been to our sessions before, welcome back. We also have invited some colleagues from other universities around the world, so thank you everyone for joining us here this afternoon. So what are we going to talk about? Again, we kind of combined two standards, 7 and 8, accessibility, usability, and student support. And I think a lot of ways these things sort of tie in together, and that's why this works so well, doing this as one workshop. But there's a lot of things that can influence the success of an online student. And so that's why I just kind of want to talk about them briefly right at the beginning here. Definitely the way students structure their time is going to be different as an online student. The next one, motivation. Students that are taking an online course or in an online program probably have a different motivation than maybe a student that's taking a traditional face-to-face or on-ground course. And so you want to kind of think about how you can get at those motivations. And I think, again, a lot of the things we're going to talk about today, usability, supporting your students, are really going to tie into that. Another difference that the online student may face is that they may have a different work personal balance that they're kind of engaged in. And so, that might be that non-traditional student that's a full-time working adult. Maybe they're balancing not only that full-time job, but other family obligations. And that's why they're taking that online course, because they're kind of active in their learning, maybe at a different time of day, different chunks of time over the course of the week. So those are all things to consider. Isolation. Online students can definitely feel isolated from the course. Jamal, I see you have a question. While I'm kind of going over some of these things, if you want to type your question into the text chat area, I think I can probably answer it, and maybe even some others will share some ideas. So hopefully you don't feel too isolated, since I acknowledged your raised hand right away, and I think that's part of what we need to consider when we're virtual like we are here today. Students want to feel like they're being listened to and that they have a chance to express themselves. Let me know, Jamal, if you would like to try to use your microphone. But the last three are the ones that are going to be important, I think, for what we're going to talk about today. And that's how we can support our students, what technology is going to be an enhancement to the space, and then how to sort of reduce any sort of information overload. Because that is something that students can definitely experience early on if some of these supports are not kind of addressed early in some of the ways we set up our online course. So what we're going to do here this afternoon is we are going to cover a couple of the objectives, and I hope we're going to be able to really explore how usability and accessibility can set students up for that success. Also, how learners can connect with some valuable support services. And so I'm going to kind of break them down, this workshop, into 3 different sections and kind of talk about each of those elements. I'm probably going to mix them up a little bit too, because I think sometimes they really relate to each other, and they make sense to talk about together. Again, if anyone does have any questions, just let me know and put something in the text chat area. I have Stephanie Richter with me here also this afternoon. She's our assistant director here. She will definitely be watching the text chat area, and she'll probably be feeding in a lot of support and resources for everyone. So I'm glad to have her here this afternoon. So we're going to talk about usability first. And so what do I mean by usability? Um, think about when you entered this particular Blackboard Collaborate Ultra environment here. You wanted to be able to use it. You wanted it to be really instinctual. And one of the things I noticed was, even though I went over how to use the interface, folks were already using the text chat area. You know, they're already testing different things in the environment. And so that's what I mean about usability. It's really important that, you know, whatever tools you use, whatever environments you set up, that it's really easy for the students to be able to use, and they're not stressing out or you know, kind of bogged down early because they're having trouble with the technology. So you want to make that as easy as possible for them. So I'm going to give you some pointers on how you might be able to accomplish that. And the first one is to really plan out your navigation. And so um, if you've kind of worked in an online environment already, or if even been an online student, you've probably seen some pros and cons to um, a really well planned out navigation versus maybe not, kind of an afterthought navigation. And this is one of the things that's just really important to your students. You want to make sure it promotes ease of use. So everything is, again, very intuitive, and very direct on what sort of thing you want them to do. And so here I've created, it's just actually a sample from another course that a colleague created. And you know, we've created this left-hand navigation, welcome, start here. You know, a good label that really tells the students that, you know, this is where they should start, and then there'll be further directions on where to move into next. The next recommendation, so I kind of talked about really good labels that tell them exactly what you want them to do, is that your labels are consistent. So, you know, you don't want a bunch of labels that say the same thing. You don't want a bunch of labels that are maybe misleading. In this case, our next one is announcements. And, you know, that's where the students can check every week, every day, whatever process you have in place for announcements, and they know to look there for messages from you. If you want to call it something else, that's fine, as long as you are consistent and they make sense to you. So, for instance, if you are going to call it news, then you would want to refer to it maybe in your syllabus that, you know, each week your students should check the news section for whatever updates you have for them. So again, just clearly labeled and consistent are what's important here. Everything should be organized. And so I'm going to move over to sort of this other side now, where you see we have things chunked. chunked and organized. Um, there's only a couple instances I can think of where I usually use the word chunked, and that's organizing your online course and big chocolate chips. So we're going to talk specifically about how you're going to organize your content in this particular case. And so what I've done here is I've chunked all the content in this online course by what I'm calling modules. And I've used this folder structure. And that's so that the students understand that everything they need in Module 10 is in sort of this folder. And again, I'm consistently using it. The week before, it was Module 9. So again, each week that student has that predictable folder in which they know they can go in there and find their content. They're not hunting around for it. You're not answering a ton of questions on where they can find things because you've done a really good job of organizing how all the material is laid out. Having worked with a variety of faculty over the years, I find that they do like this kind of folder format. They often kind of start with just kind of adding content into their learning management system, which here at NIU is Blackboard. But these folders just kind of really keep things organized and just takes it up to that next level a little bit. I've also, in this example, there's dates in here, so it's very clear on when the students should be accessing this. Again, it's your choice what you actually call these things. So if you don't want to call them modules, if you rather call them weekly folders or unit folders, or even something more topic specific, like I think Module 9 has a topic here, final project development and presentations, you can call it that. Again, it's your choice, it's your freedom to be able to call it whatever you want. But again, just kind of keep it consistent. You don't want to be calling it week 1 and then next week it's module 2. You know, it's that consistency that's important. Let's see, I want to make sure we're covering everything. The other thing is that I did use the folder icons here. If there's other icons that you'd like to use that make more sense, you can actually add in a picture of an icon maybe that's representative of the content in that folder, or even maybe a little calendar if you want to point out what week it's in. Those are just some ways that you can be a little bit creative with that usability piece to designing your online course. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and start talking about accessibility. But again, I want to pause for just a minute to see if there are any questions out there, or perhaps you'd like to share some recommendations on what you have done and what you have found valuable. So feel free, again, to add things to the text chat area. This is a way of organizing and planning out the navigation, again, that we've found to work really well. But I'm sure there are many other well planned out navigation schemes. Thank you, Jamal, for your support. And again, feel free to type things into the text chat area as I continue to talk, but we're going to talk a little bit more about accessibility right now. And I think one of the simple definitions when I talk about accessibility is designing your course in order to meet the needs of the most diverse population of students possible. And so I was kind of designing this workshop, and I found a couple definitions that I think really spoke to me and helped me think about this a little bit more. And the first one was that Accessibility really refers to the quality of being available when needed. So when your students need to reach out to you, when they need to interact with the content, when they need to find resources, um, the quality is that they are able to do that very easily, which kind of leads right into the second one, which is accessibility is all about ease of use, that they can interact and use this content and these resources, that they're going to be able to approach and participate in any of the activities that you have planned out for the course, and then that everything is going to be obtainable and attainable. And I will admit to sort of putting that together and having something in my mind about that, but when I was reviewing this morning, I thought, what is the difference between those two words? And um, so I looked it up because I like to use my own resources. And obtainable was all about this availability to use. So letting your students kind of get a hold of it. Attainable had more to do with their achievement. So if there's any sort of goal you have for your students or their success in your course, you want to make sure that everything is attainable to them. And so one of the really simple ways to do this is to let your students know about any of the resources that are available to students with disabilities. This is a very important part of accessibility, and it's one that if you're lucky enough, like we are at NIU, to have some excellent resources, provide that information to your students. So in this case, I've just have sort of a screenshot of an example of how you can do this quickly and easily. And it can be just by adding a link in your Blackboard or any of your learning management system courses, and just providing that link to whatever your disability resource center is. And so just again, quick and easy. I found a couple other resources that I thought were helpful to students, so I wanted to make sure I added them here. Here in Illinois, we have an Illinois Information Technology Accessibility Act, and so that's letting the students know exactly what sort of standards and guidelines and recommendations are put out by this particular act. And then any other kind of supports that I think will help the students. I found this Introduction to Web Accessibility one, and I thought, this would really help the students. Here at NIU, we also have a requirement that all of our faculty and teaching instructors add this ADA statement and add a little information about how NIU addresses disability. And so that's a good thing to kind of add it to all of your courses, add it to your syllabus as it's required here, and let those students know that they can tap into those resources. And then this just expand a little bit more on getting that really solid, detailed contact information for your students, add it right to the course. I found a wealth of resources in our Disability Resource Center that included services to students, faculty and staff, and parents here at NIU. There is accommodation procedures, so if you're perhaps new in your role as faculty or instructing staff, that you'll be aware of what the accommodation procedures are for students with disabilities. And then again, how can you reach out to these folks? Here's the information for you. Here's the information you can provide to your students in a variety of different ways to contact the Disability Resource Center. And I am going to put that link into the text chat area so you can explore those resources right away and be able to link them in your Blackboard course. And for the folks that are outside of NIU, do your own internet search with your university pages and see if you can find some of those resources too. When we talk about accessibility, we often talk about universal design. Here in faculty development, we've recently had um, a whole series of workshops on universal design. And so, Stephanie, if you can find maybe some archive links, I meant to pull them up earlier, you might be able to view those workshops at your own leisure and learn a little bit more about universal design. Um, Thank you. But universal design works so well with accessibility because these are design principles that have all been created with this idea of what can we do that will just be the best for the most, again, diverse population of students. And here are some of them here. And again, Stephanie's going to come up. There's that link. Awesome for part one. But I'm going to give you some pointers that are just, again, kind of some quick and easy ones that you can incorporate into your course. One is to try to find alternative formats for printed materials, and whether that be something that has an audio to it, or one of the great things is you can simply take printed material and make them into a PDF, and then they can be used by a screen reader. Another thought of using alternative formats is, just using alternative formats for any kind of content that you want to deliver, whether it's something like adding more video or just maybe an infographic or something that will allow um, students to be able to see things in maybe smaller bite-sized chunks. Again, whatever kind of alternative formats help that diverse body of students. When you are doing something in a printed material, or you're creating that PowerPoint, think about some things like your font size or the overall legibility of the font. I think that we have so many choices now on fonts and graphics and creative ways to present materials that sometimes we can have it sort of be overdone. And what happens is then the students can't even really engage into it because it's kind of confusing um, and kind of overdone. I think one of the examples that I see here with Blackboard is Blackboard allows you to change the navigation buttons that you have in that left-hand navigation. And sometimes you can create like alligator skin background to these buttons, and if you use like a yellow font, they're extremely hard to read. And so I would say just, think about that when you're kind of designing your course, that, somebody's actually going to need to read that. So just kind of be careful with that. Another thing to think about is the use of negative space. And in this presentation that I've done this afternoon, I really tried to keep everything really simple. I've got a lot of negative space, which is kind of the white space that's surrounding the points I'm trying to make. But that's in order to kind of draw your eyes to the points that I want to make, and things aren't kind of clustered too much. Again, thinking about that negative space, you want to be careful with your background images, that your background images are kind of taking over. And again, we can get really creative with some of these things now. And so we kind of just, for a good universal design, we want to kind of just back off a little bit and make sure that, yes, a picture can say 1,000 words, but let's also kind of keep it simple. Um, if you're doing audio, I said mixing formats up, not always using printed material is really good. If you're using audio, make sure it's clear. You hopefully have the advantage of not maybe having a busy street behind you, or music's playing in the background, or people are walking in and out. I'm using a headset with a microphone. That's something we recommend here because the audio comes out better than if I just use my webcam. Whatever kind of things you can do to help make sure that audio is good and clear is great. Also, chunk up. I'm using that word chunk again. I said that's always makes sense to me when I'm talking about course design. Chunk up videos or audio that you're doing, and that's to keep the students' attention, and also to help them kind of be able to process it. So try to avoid anything that's too long or too lengthy, that they're just kind of going to get themselves distracted. So again, shorter's better. What is short? From what I've heard, right around maybe 7 to 12 minutes is a good kind of way to think about it. If you have a 20-minute something and it's really important, then that's okay. But try to make that kind of the not normal length for your videos. This kind of statement down here on the bottom, acknowledge that not all students learn and demonstrate mastery in the same way. Whenever you're designing an online course, I think that's a good idea to keep in the back of your mind that, we're going to have some students that really do like those quick videos, other students that love reading journal articles and kind of highlighting all over them to make notes. Students learn in different ways. And so think about that when you're creating content and delivering and instructing in your online course. But they also demonstrate mastery in different ways. So if you ever have an opportunity to kind of change up an assignment maybe, from writing a paper to creating a video, think about that idea that this diverse body of students are going to learn and demonstrate mastery in different ways. Now, here are some things that you may not know about already, but these are some of the things that our Blackboard users have access to. And so I'll start with the first one, which is called Quick Links. And you may never have noticed it before, but when you're in Blackboard, in the corner above the navigation is a tiny little kind of chain icon in there. And what that is it's called Quick Links. And it allows students that are keyboard only or have low or no vision to be able to navigate through the Blackboard Learning Management System without actually using a screen. It's keyboard only. So that is a great, like, instantaneous way you can help your students that have low or no vision. But again, that also makes it important for that navigation to be to work really well, because whatever kind of clear labeling and navigation you set up in the course is what the students are going to be keyboard only moving through to kind of interact again in that environment in an online course. So that's kind of nice, interesting to kind of look at. I think Quick Links is a good way to kind of even look at your navigation in a different way and see if things seem to be outlined the way you had anticipated. And so this is what a page that we had done actually looks like when you click on those quick links. So really helpful for those students. The next one is the idea of using closed captioning and transcripts when you create videos for your students. So again, if you're going off that beyond printed material, you want to make sure that you create some sort of closed captioning for students that are low to no hearing. And so YouTube actually will allow you to do closed captioning. YouTube will, if you upload a video to YouTube, it will allow you to kind of do an auto sync closed captioning. It comes out really strangely sometimes. The quality gets better and better every day, but it's not quite going to come out perfect. But the nice thing is that it then allows you to kind of make some quick and easy edits and make those closed captioning match up with what you're saying in the video. So the other advantage to using closed captioning is that if students are in a, even well-hearing students are in a noisy environment, they can take advantage of the closed captioning and be able to follow along with what you are delivering to them. So when you create this closed captioning, or if you create a transcript or a script for yourself ahead of time, you can also add that transcript to any of the videos that you use. And so students will be able to read through that transcript. And not only is it great for the students that would really benefit from that, but it also almost becomes your notes. And so students can really pay attention to what's happening in the video, and they know that all those notes that they can kind of refer back to will be in the transcript. So that's another great advantage of using either closed captioning or transcripts. Great for all your students. I think I mentioned this earlier, but by just taking your Word documents and converting them into a PDF will make them accessible to students that use screen readers. Super easy to make something into a PDF. Of course, it also prevents them from being able to change any of the content that you've maybe provided to them as a Word document. So just remember as you go along and you're adding documents to your course to just quickly make them into PDF really helps. When you use any other visual information like graphs or charts or pictures or photographs, it's going to ask you if you would add an alt tag. And that is just some sort of description of whatever that graph or that picture is. And so that identifies for the low to no vision students. It takes seconds when you're uploading it. It seems like, oh, but that's 3 seconds more than I wanted to spend. But just go ahead and do it. And then everything has those alt tags. And it really will help you make your course more accessible for, again, that diverse body of students. Another idea is for our Blackboard users out there, don't forget you can use the test exceptions, the extensions, assignment exceptions to different assessments that you have with your students. And that's something that we can do in Blackboard and is just actually became easier. It used to be part of an adaptive release, but now it's right in when you create the assignment. So that will really help your students that have any accommodations which would require you to maybe extend the length of time that they have to complete an assignment. Let us know if you would like to know how to do that. Again, it just became much easier to do anyways, but um, can really help you to support your students in that way. And then I, I kind of mixed it in there, but I want to make sure I'm really clear about it. Um, if students are learning to demonstrate mastery in different ways, if you can, give them a choice in how they can demonstrate mastery to you, whether that's a couple different options. They can submit an assignment in a different format, or maybe even how they respond to a discussion board. Um, I know, looking at my audience here, I know that you've seen discussion boards answered with pictures, with videos, with straight text. Just try to think of some ways to be creative so that the students can demonstrate that mastery in a variety of ways. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes the assignments, they need to interact with a spreadsheet a certain way, and that then they're going to have to interact with the spreadsheet a certain way, and that's okay. Please let me know if you have any questions on some of the pointers I've given you for accessibility. Stephanie's added 2 of the archive links for our universal design. Don't look at them now, just kind of maybe put them up into one of your tabs, and you can take a look at them later to understand any more of these design principles. But the last kind of information I want to talk about with accessibility is it's important, if you're using some kind of external technology, that you add some sort of link to that external technology's policy on accessibility. That's letting your students know that um, you've thought about that when you selected these technologies, and that you're continuing to support them in that way. And I found that they're out there. If you do a search for whatever your technology you're considering, and you just kind of put the name of it in there and accessibility policy, you might find something. So this example I have here is actually a technology called VoiceThread, and this is their policy, their sort of commitment they have to making their product more accessible. I think that this particular example also addresses maybe some um, people with disabilities that we don't normally think of when we think of accessibility, and that's specific to maybe some learning needs, or maybe even students that are in sort of some different age ranges, depending on what kind of course we have. But I think what I love best about VoiceThread in their accessibility policy is they are looking for input about a variety of differently abled users. And so that, again, is a good way to think of that all of our students is they are differently abled users, and we want to be able to support as many as possible. So, switching gears again. And again, any questions you have, just type them into the text chat area. We're going to talk about academic support and student services. So that student support. Okay, no questions so far. Great, thank you for letting me know. Um, when I actually did this workshop for the first time, right around this time last year. And so I kind of dug in and found out what kind of academic and student services I could find here at NIU for online students. And, I don't know what I expected, but I thought, there's a lot of support services here on campus. I remember being an online student myself, not here at NIU, but what kind of services do I want available to my students now? And I think I was pleasantly surprised at some of the things I found. And the first one that I thought was just great was how supportive the library already really was in supporting online students. And so I found, see if I found a bunch of resources. I'm going to add the link to what we have here from the library at NIU. And there was all kinds of support services they had. Resources on how to cite things. Of course, plenty of e-references and electronic references that students could tap into. They call it an e-reference bookshelf. And so, you know, so helpful to those students out there. Of course, a wealth of journal databases that students could have access from and never have to actually step foot on campus. And then all kinds of tutorials on how to use the library services that were available to them here. But one of my favorites was this Ask a Librarian. And I think if you go to that link that I just put up there, the Ask a Librarian becomes very prominent. And we're lucky enough here that we have subject specialists in many of the disciplines. And this just will let you tap in and be able to chat or email or even text with a subject specialist at the library. But again, just a wonderful resource for the students that maybe they weren't aware of. Hi, Alicia. Weren't aware of that they, again, can use and never really even have to step foot on the the ground, the face-to-face campus. They can kind of stay in the virtual world. Switching gears from the library a little bit, I wanted to find out what more was available from the student academic support realm. And one of the things that I really liked was that the Writing Center actually conducts online synchronous sessions using Google Hangout. And so students, if they're having trouble with their writing or they want some support in that area, they can join sort of these online sessions and be able to interact with the folks at the writing session, and the writing center, and not have to actually come to any of the sessions that are here. Again, so if they don't have the time, they are physically too far away, or maybe even getting back to that accessibility a little bit, maybe don't have the physical capabilities to interact with the Writing Center on campus, they have these online sessions. So really excited about that. I also found out that the Access program here has some programs that online students can engage in. One was called the A Plus program. There's peer assisted learning and even some supplemental instruction. One of the things I found was that there was also some specific programs for online students that were at sort of the college or the department level. And so definitely look at some of these resources that I'm giving you, but look for um, your own discipline or your own department to see if they have more specific resources for you. And so I've added some information from our Office of Student Academic Success, just sort of so you have that link to kind of start your exploration of more of that academic support that is available. One of the things too that I wanted to point out, and we'll talk about it when we talk about technology requirements a little bit more, but it's really nice that I found that the requirements that the students would need to partake in these were all right up front, and that way they're not perhaps clicking on a Google Hangout for the Writing Center and then realizing that they really needed, a webcam. And so letting them know what those requirements up front are really important. The Career Resource Center had some online resources on resume building, finding internships, and even this mentoring program that I thought was really impressive, where they match current students with alumni, and they engage in this career mentoring process online. The alumni doesn't have to come to campus, the student doesn't have to come to campus, and they're still getting that really good, rich relationship with an alumni on how to start maybe the next chapter in their lives as they develop as career professionals. So again, really some nice things to see that we have available to our students here. And I will add the career services link. Last time I did this session, somebody asked if there was a place that you could find all of these. And I dug around and found quite a few, but I don't know if I found this one magical place that had them all. But after this session is over, I'm going to send you out a couple checklists, and the checklists are going to include just some reminders of things that you may want to incorporate into your course that we've talked about here today, but it will also have all of those links for you. So I said I was going to have some tips for you, a lot of quick and easy things. Just add these links right into your Blackboard course, and it will mean a lot for your students, and it will definitely give you that quality online course that you're looking for, at least from the perspective of usability, accessibility, and student support. So the next recommendation is that when you are adding any sort of technology to your course, that you let your students know ahead of time what the requirement is. When you got my email on what the requirements were for here, I kind of let you know that it was important to have a speaker. You could have a microphone if you wanted to speak. Everything was within the browser. I was giving you those hardware and software requirements that you needed. And so you want to be able to do that with your students. Let them know when they are actually registering for the course so that they're prepared and they're not stressed out that first week of the course because they do not have all the requirements that they will need within the course. Let them know how to obtain it. The students at NIU have access to Blackboard. There may be some other requirements, technology requirements that you have for them. I always like the example of if it was a CAD programming, computer programming type of course, and they needed some CAD software. You're going to want to let them know how they can get it. And maybe that's in the bookstore, maybe that's from a particular website. Maybe it's from Best Buy, and you just kind of want to let them know where they can find it. Again, they're going to be more likely to be prepared on that first week of course by letting them know all of this. Here at NIU, we also have something called Anywhere apps, and those are some typical apps that students might need to have access to, and they won't necessarily have to pay for software. And so check out the Anywhere apps if there's something you think that they might need ahead of time. Again, going back to kind of like the department level, I've also seen departments kind of bundle a collection of Anywhere apps for their students so that they know that all their students in the programs have access to these kind of common apps out there. So check that one out too. You don't want to be the technical support for your students if you can avoid that. So give them access to the information where they can get the support. It's the same as the Disability Resource Center and academic support. Provide them with that information. Here at NIU, NIU has a service desk. It is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So again, great resource for them. Hopefully they are not trying to email you at 2 o'clock in the morning because they're up but you're not. And they can get a hold of what's called the service desk here at NIU. They used to be called the help desk, but they're changing their angle a little bit. It's called the service desk now. They also have a knowledge base, kb.niu.edu, that has a wealth of information that will help the students. Here in faculty development, we do have a Teaching with Blackboard for Students page. We are here for the faculty more than the students, so it's not quite as all-encompassing as the Teaching with Blackboard for the faculty and staff, but we do have some student information, so feel free to check that out. Before I kind of wrap things up, the last one I want to talk about is technology support through Lynda.com. So if you haven't seen Lynda.com yet, fairly new to NIU, I think we kind of institutionally adopted it or gained access to it in October. Lynda.com has just a huge menu of tutorials, courses, instructions on how to use just so many things. And so if you want to have a student, I put some examples up here. If you're going to have students use Adobe Illustrator, for instance, because they're going to be doing some sort of graphic design project, then you can kind of back off from teaching them how to use Illustrator because you can link a lynda.com course within your Blackboard course, and they can kind of learn how to use Illustrator through lynda.com, and that frees you up to concentrate on the actual course that you're teaching. So it's just a nice way to kind of support them in learning a new technology without that sort of taking over all of your teaching. Okay. So we are getting down to the last few minutes, and I promised that I would kind of connect all of this to what this means to Quality Matters, which is the quality online course design standards that we have adopted at Northern Illinois University. And so this is everything we've just talked about in the last 50 minutes, kind of in this huge sentence. It is 2 standards, so it's a really big sentence, but I'll go ahead and read it to you. Quality online courses have clear descriptions on how technical support is offered, along with access to accessibility policies and services, academic and student support to help learners succeed, and to meet the needs of all students. The course navigation is easy to use. Information on all accessibility technologies is provided. Students are provided with alternative access to course materials. Design facilitates readability, and multimedia is an enhancement and not a barrier. So that was a loaded sentence. We covered a lot of information this afternoon. And again, you will get an archive link to this recording to go back and kind of review and go back. What did Tracy say about this? You can go back and do that. Of course, you can always ask us if you have any questions. I hope these resources will be valuable to you and to your students. So what we covered here today is how your course should reflect a commitment to accessibility and usability for all students. Hopefully you found some ways to support your student success and how it should be accessible to all students. And then please take advantage of the tools and the services available to you and to your students. I'm sure you could even find more out there. I'd love to hear about more. If you have any questions, feel free to add them to the text chat area. But also, if there's something that you think about later, feel free to reach out to us, reach out to me. Again, my name is Tracy Miller, and I'm the online teaching coordinator. Here's my email. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, here's my Twitter handle. And then if you'd like to follow online program development and support, you can follow them on Twitter or like us on Facebook. So I hear the chimes in the background, so it looks like we're at the end of our hour together, but I will certainly hang out for a few minutes to um, answer any questions that you might have.